I'm going to put this warning out there, and I wish I didn't have to do it. People are going to die. People are going to die. Students are going to die unless we put an end to this now. That's not a guess. That is based on the experience we have had with protests just like this one. We're seeing the same sorts of signs: increased agitation, increased confrontations, increased hate and vitriol and violence, the same sort of signs, increased lawlessness that led to deaths at CHOP. And if you don't believe it's going to happen on our college campuses, you are very, very wrong. And people like Shasti Conrad will be the ones left with blood on their hands. I drew the comparison a couple weeks ago to what's happening on these college campuses and Seattle's occupied protest zone known as CHOP, because these are occupations of these campuses. And where else has gone through something similar to this but here in Seattle in the summer of 2020, when you had armed far-left activists that took over 6 square blocks of Seattle for an entire month. And the only way they were able to do it is because of the complete cowardice of elected officials who, for some reason, would never kowtow to the far right, but when it comes to the far left, completely hands off. And I'm reminded of CHOP again this week because I'm thinking forward. Because we've been there. We know where this ends. We know where CHOP ended. CHOP ended in death. CHOP ended in murder. And only then, only when there was bloodshed, did politicians who'd called it, a summer of love, come back and say, oh, we've got to go in there, send the police in. Did politicians who'd openly participated and advocated for it come back and say, maybe it's time to end this. So we know what happened with CHOP, so that's what's going to happen on these college campuses. If we don't believe that, then we're fooling ourselves. Particular, I was reminded of Councilwoman Lisa Herbold. She was one of several council members who went down to what would become CHOP in Seattle during the protests that happened there, and they took smiling selfies like, yay, look at us. Look at us with the activists who are clashing with police every night, supporting the crime and the violence and the unrest that allowed for the formation of CHOP. Now, Lisa Herbold and her other friends on the city council, they then watched, after participating in it and excusing it, they then watched what that kind of lawless environment devolved into. And again, it devolved into death. It devolved into the murder of young kids of color, which I thought the whole thing was about protecting Black lives. And it took 2.5 weeks, 2.5 weeks of that, for Councilwoman Lisa Herbold to be the first council member who'd supported the zone to come out and speak against it. I remember this very well at the time. She published an op-ed in The Stranger saying, we must end the conditions in CHOP that are leading to violence and death. It's long past time for us all to take collective responsibility for the violence that has occurred in CHOP since it was first established over 2 weeks ago. And I thought at the time, you have to be kidding me. Collective responsibility? I'm not taking responsibility for jack. Because a lot of us spoke out about CHOP. My crew was mobbed the night that CHOP was formed. We were forced to seek refuge in a fire station and had to hold up there for 30 minutes waiting to figure out how we were going to get out. And they had to sneak us out of this building because there wasn't a cop in sight. I knew the night CHOP was formed that it was dangerous and it was violent. And only after people are killed, you have council members who are like, maybe this isn't safe. You think? Now compare that to what's happening right now on college campuses. We all know it's not safe. We all know that, first of all, there have already been acts of violence. There have already been acts of intimidation. And we know One, because we have a brain, we have common sense, right? And because we saw what happened in Seattle's occupied protest zone, where you have a lawless area controlled by anarchists. We know that even on college campuses that haven't turned violent yet, in these occupied protests, that it will, that it's only a matter of time. So you think that would give, especially in our state, you think that that would give our leaders the courage and the receipts to be able to say, we have to stop this now, before people die. But of course not, because this is the far left, and you cannot, as a Democrat, tell the far left that what they're doing has gone too far, that it's too much. And Shasti Conrad, the chair of the Washington State Democratic Party, has now proven that. The chair of the state Democratic Party came out with a statement defending the occupied protest happening on the campus of the University of Washington. She said, as we continue to monitor the peaceful gathering of students at the University of Washington, the Washington State Democratic Party staunchly supports the legal rights of all members of the public to peacefully assemble. Each of us has a constitutional right to protest in places that are open to the public, including students. The Washington State Democratic Party preemptively opposes any actions taken by the University of Washington leadership and law enforcement that would violate students' First Amendment rights. We urge everyone in the protest to maintain public safety as they peacefully exercise their fundamental civil rights. If this were a group of right-wing neo-Nazis who were occupying a space on the campus of the University of Washington, Governor Inslee's alma mater, Bob Ferguson's alma mater, do you really believe that Shasti Conrad and the State Democratic Party would put out a statement saying, we're monitoring this peaceful gathering of right-wing neo-Nazis, and we support their rights, and we encourage police not to do anything about it, and we encourage the University of Washington not to do anything about it? Of course not. Would Jay Inslee stay silent? Of course not. Would Bob Ferguson stay silent? Of course not. In fact, they'd have a big old press conference every single day. It would be one phone call from the governor's office to UW, clear them out. But left-wing Nazis? Pfft, leave them there. We'll defend them. We'll defend their First Amendment rights. And look, I'll defend people's First Amendment rights too. When it is peaceful, when it is lawful. That's not what this is. And it wasn't what it was when Shasti Conrad put the statement out. By the time she put the statement out, our friend Jonathan Cho had already been assaulted down there while he was just trying to film things.
Just assaulted right now by several members of the pro-Hamas crowd, Antifa. Thankfully, I just got away with a bloody hand here. They ripped away my phone, started attacking me, so I had to leave the area. But this is what the far left activists do. They've taken over the quad, and they're only allowing people who are sympathetic to their cause on campus right now.
And that includes Jewish students and Jewish professors. Our friend Jason Rantz. Again, I want you to watch these clips in the context of what the State Democratic Party said about this being all just a peaceful, lawful gathering of students, and we encourage the university and police not to do anything about it. So she must not care that a Jewish professor who was on campus was stalked and harassed.
So then could you just like do us a favor and get out of here?
No. What are you doing here? I mean, this is a public space. People are allowed to be here as long as they obey university regulations. You guys are the ones who are not obeying regulations. You're the ones who should leave.
Yeah, I agree. Shasti Conrad doesn't agree, though. She thinks all of this is just fine, and she obviously doesn't care that Jewish students at the University of Washington are not being allowed to move around freely.
Listen, you can have a request, but I have the right to walk freely on my own campus.
And we have the right to say no to your request.
Yeah, I have the right to walk freely through my campus, so please, I'm not trying to push you.
Please let us go. Please do not physically block anyone.
I just want to walk this way.
I think the reason that you want to walk that way is because it is antagonistic.
I want to walk this way because it's my campus and I'm allowed to walk this way.
It's not antagonizing to talk about the death of Jewish people as if it's righteous, that's not antagonizing. But a Jewish student who wants to walk down a sidewalk on the campus where he pays tuition to go to, that's antagonizing. You can't do that. You don't have a First Amendment right to stop people's movements in public places. You do not have a First Amendment right to do that. Shasti Conrad with the Democratic Party, do you not know that? Do you not know what First Amendment protections provide for? Do you not care about Jewish professors being harassed and stalked? Do you not care about Jewish students who can't walk down a sidewalk on the campus that they pay tuition at? Is that really the side that you're going to take in this? And there was a video put out by Como News, and I also saw some follow-up video to this of a Jewish student with an Israeli flag ripped out of their hand. And the agitator, after ripping it out of their hand, runs away with it. And there was a follow-up video to it where they were tearing it into pieces. So they want to be able to, in the words of the Democratic Party, just peacefully assemble, share their views about Hamas and Palestine. And they feel like they have a right to do that, to have an occupied protest on a college campus, and nobody should interfere with them. But God forbid a student walks around peacefully with an Israeli flag. Can't have that. We got to take that out of his hand. We've got to rip it up. We got to burn it. And after all, the state Democratic Party, the woman in charge of the party says it's okay. And she's telling people to let us do it. And we wonder why they feel so emboldened. We've allowed them to believe that what they're doing is right and righteous and they're on the correct side of things. They're not. They never have been. And again, I'm going to put this warning out there, and I wish I didn't have to do it. People are going to die. People are going to die. Students are going to die unless we put an end to this now. That's not a guess. That is based on the experience we have had with protests just like this one. We're seeing the same sorts of signs, increased agitation, increased confrontations, increased hate and vitriol and violence, the same sort of signs, increased lawlessness that led to deaths at CHOP. And if you don't believe it's going to happen on our college campuses, you are very, very wrong. And people like Shasti Conrad will be the ones left with blood on their hands. Shameful.